So it's a huge honor for me to be here. I'm going to hopefully get through as much as possible in 20 minutes. The reason why it's a huge honor for me, and I don't know if you read any of the bios of anybody, but so I'm a 20-year Army vet. I commanded Charlie 366 right here at Fort Hood. I was in the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. I grew up under the likes of giants like Bob Cohn, who just recently retired as our TRADOC commander, was my squadron commander. Sergeant Major of the Army. Raymond Chandler was my headquarters HHT First Sergeant. I got to work for General Casey while he was the Army Chief of Staff, and yet I got to serve under some of the best platoon sergeants the United States Army has ever created, guys like Sergeant First Class Jose Alonzo, and then at the very end, my last Sergeant Major is one of the greatest Sergeant Majors ever. Right here was his last assignment when he was leading 3rd Brigade 1st Cav. Love him or hate him, he was awesome. Sergeant Major James D. Pippin. So for me to be here talking to you all is a huge thrill because, hey Gene, how are you? Because I am quite literally the ghost of either your Christmas future or I'm the ghost of your Christmas present, depending on where you are in the transition process, or I'm the ghost of your Christmas past. But for me to make this informative for the next 20 minutes, I need to know a little bit more about you all by a quick raise of hands. So how many of you all are within 1 year of transition? Raise your hands good and high. All right, keep them up if you're within 6 months of transition. Okay, keep them up if you're within 3 months of transition. Holy crap, all right, put them down. All right, I've gone on record. I have testified before the United States Congress to say that our military transition process is broken and it needs to be improved. So I will get 18 minutes remaining to tell you what things I think you, is that Chaz? What you could be doing better going forward to help yourself because you're not going to transition in enough time for the military to fix it. One of the first things I'll tell you is what an entrepreneur does, and then I'll tell you my story, and you tell me if any of this resonates. First thing, just to understand that an entrepreneur wants to do, because it talks here about finding the dream job or starting your own business. There's actually a third, which is you can do both. Your dream job could be your own adventure. And in my case, understanding what it is that entrepreneurs really do, entrepreneurs fix problems before waiting for others to do it. Period. I can't find a dictionary anywhere that has a definition that makes more sense. So let me tell you how that kind of happened in the grand scheme. So the big poster of why they probably invited me here is I fall into that category of successful entrepreneur. So I retired from the Army right out of here at Fort Hood because I was teaching leadership and strategy at Army ROTC down at UT Austin. And then, so this was my separation point. In May of 13 and in September of 14, basically 15 months later, I sold my company to a little tiny automobile maker named Mercedes-Benz Daimler. Maybe you've heard of them. So I'm in that category of successful, but what I want you all to understand is that there is very little I did that you can't already do if you fall into that subset of people who want to fix stuff before waiting for people to do it for them. I was late and I apologize because it took me 40 minutes, 40, after driving up from Austin, 40 minutes from the time I pulled my car in the parking lot till I walked into the visitor center, grabbed a little number thingy. I was 3 away from being called, 40 minutes. So if you're in the category of people like me that you were going insanely mad trying to figure out why this system was so terrible and slow and why people weren't motivated to move more quickly and why the answers I got were complete horse you know what, if you're in that category, you're going to enjoy the next 15 minutes for the remainder of my time. If you're in the category that said, oh shit, that's awesome. I got 40 minutes to sit here and do nothing and then sit in the chair, I might drive you crazy over the next 15 minutes because it's 2 different kinds of people and I totally get it. And there's nothing wrong with those of you who want to just find the 9-to-5 job. So I want to talk to those who fall in this first category, which is they're looking for the dream job that is their next adventure. I'm going to be all over the map, and I apologize in advance. So the first thing you have to do, and Brad's comments were fabulous. I would absolutely build on everything he said. The first thing you need to do as you're transitioning out is figure out what you love. Or, said in a different way, similar to what he said in terms of core values, what drives you crazy that you feel like you got to fix. So this was me going back a couple of years. After a trip through Iraq in 2004 and a trip through Iraq in 2007, it became increasingly clear to me that one of the very biggest reasons, and oh heck yes, I'm saying this here at Fort Hood, Texas, one of the biggest reasons why we were in the Middle East was a long-term strategy to secure a very reliable source to Mideast oil because the world is still addicted to it. And all that burned me up that we had so much of that oil that we were protecting that was then being shipped all over the world, and a lot of it got to the United States, and then it went in your tailpipe, and then you rushed into traffic, got stuck, and then all that blood, sweat, and tears that the United States Army secured, that ready supply of energy, was just being blown out your tailpipe. And that's what's going on in that upper left-hand corner. 76% of all the cars in the road only have one person in them. So I started to dig down deep into that energy issue. Then when I lived in Washington, D.C. in 2011, I realized that we had buses. I was working at the Pentagon. We had Metro. I could drive to work. I could ride with a friend to work. I could even bike to work if I felt frisky. But yet I couldn't find one place to just answer a simple question. What's cheaper and faster? Okay, one day I needed to take the bus in because I don't want to drive in because it's a 15-minute ride to the Pentagon on good traffic, and then it's a 15-minute walk. The parking lot's so darn big. But I couldn't find a website that would compare both my options, so I just started to make it. But it's not, this is the takeaway, this is not something you just do overnight. When I was stationed at Fort Bliss, and then again at Fort Carson, and then at Fort Hood, every time I PCS'd, they asked me the same dumb questions about me transiting. I would have to go to the commissary to get checked off. I would have to go to the PX to get checked off. What was driving me crazy about it is that every post I went to asked me the same dumb questions, but no post had one sheet that said, this is the one-stop shop out processing. Go and do it. This is medical, this is dental, this is cable, this is electric, this is everything. Instead, what we were doing to our soldiers was having them recreate the wheel every soldier, every post, every time. So in the mid-1990s, I started to make this, I call it my PCS checklist. I did it on a spreadsheet. It was all ordered like, 30 days before you got to call cable to let them know, and then 20 days before you got to make sure the transportation has the right order, and you got to call back 10 later to confirm, blah, blah, blah. And I created a PCS checklist because I was tired after 3 PCSs of doing the same things with 12 different districts and not having one simple thing because nobody ever took the time to build it from the responsible organization, i.e. the post, so I had to build it. The same thing started happening with Ride Scout and building this company. Transportation companies were bus companies. They were taxi companies. They were bicycle companies. They were rental car companies. They didn't have an interest in having you see all of your options. But you do. If you've been out drinking, you're not driving. You want to take a taxi home. But how much is that taxi going to be compared to taking a bus home? Or, who are my other friends that are here that I may not see, that are at a bar or a restaurant nearby that I can call and ride with them? It didn't exist, so I started to build it. I did not set out to build a company. I set out to solve my own problem. And in the process of doing so, what I realized is that there's a lot of things going on in society, which I love pointing out, that are kind of helping, which is on the public bus side, public transit, it's terrible. It's terrible because there aren't enough routes and there aren't enough buses that doesn't serve the community that they need to serve. Why is that? Well, service is terrible. Well, what can we do to improve service? Well, we can't spend more money. We're already spending too much. Do you know that most cities, like Austin, Texas, they spend $322 million a year for public transit. They only take at the fare box $15 million. That means you, me, and everybody that pays taxes, federal, state, and city, we're paying for a public transit system that in most cities look like that one in the upper left-hand corner. So that bothered me. These were my tax dollars, so I wanted to understand why public transportation wasn't working. And then over on that digging side, We're building roads, we're building bridges to add more lanes for more cars. Well, guess what? We can't all drive our own. We can't all drive our own car every single place we need to go. So how can we do it more efficiently? And the government, God bless it, I know it, I served in it for 20 years, isn't always the right agent of change. It isn't always the most efficient organization, as I found out 40 minutes stewing at the MP desk watching them figure out how to issue issue passes today. And the best part is, it's not those individual soldiers' problems. The PFC that was helping me was super polite. And the Spec 4, when we were talking to him, he was super polite. But we, government, operate in systems that are inefficient. So I said, well, what can I do from the private sector to try to solve my own problem? Because at the end of the day, I'm not anti-car. I'm not anti-anything, really, except for core values that are terrible. People do mean things. I said, but what's happening is smartphones are... Is that me? A huge chest? That's what it is. What's happening is everybody's got smartphones now. And inside that smartphone is a GPS. People are also realizing that a car is super expensive. $9,000 a year to own and operate a car. It's always my favorite thing as a company commander in the First Sergeant and I working together, to try to prevent our youngest soldiers when we got back from NTC after they took an entire month and a half of pay and to put that down on the biggest truck that they could find, that they only got to drive 4 days a week because all weekend long they were drinking and they didn't get to drive anyway. But I understood their quandary because they felt like they had to have a car. But luckily, cities are doing so many different things now. There's so many private sector solutions. You've heard of Uber. You've heard of Lyft. Perhaps you've heard of Zipcar and Cargo. If you live in a city with these services, you don't even need to own a car. But there's just not enough. So for instance, anybody go to the rodeo on the Ride Scout bus the other night? Nobody here? It's okay. So I am so committed to helping people that either A, don't have a car, or B, in a position to not needing to be driving a car like you've been drinking, that we're going to start a shuttle service, Ride Scout, our company, between Killeen, Fort Hood, and Austin, Texas. Because if not you, a lot of your soldiers are going to Austin. And we're building this giant 5-lane road. God knows how much money we're spending on that new highway to run parallel to 35 to connect Austin and Fort Hood. And do you know the history of that road? You know why we did it? We did it because we know that we have so many soldiers going down there late night. They're staying out late. Often too many times they're drinking. And so these tiny little windy roads were causing accidents. But it's not the tiny, winding little road. It was staying out till 2 or 3 in the morning drinking and then getting behind the wheel. But that's how government, that's how policy makes decisions. And I said we could do better. So anyway, there's a million apps out there. All that we did at Ride Scout was we bulleted together. So whether you're looking for a car, you're looking for a bus, you're looking for a taxi, whatever it is, it all comes into one place. Blah, blah, blah. Stay productive. That's a day in the life. I'm not going to show you any of this stuff because what I want to do with the remaining time I have, which is like 10 minutes, is hit a couple of high points and then back it up with some very specific things and take some questions. If you believe that you can go through the transition process, clock out at the end, take your terminal leave, and then walk into a corporate job waiting for you and wave a flag and say, I'm a veteran, I deserve a job, you have another thing coming. Because there are a lot of quality people looking for jobs. But what you have to do is start now finding out what it is that you love. And if you didn't write down Brad's fit for jobs, definitely get those slides and go back and do it. Because the purpose of the organization, the values that they have, that's what matters. You want to attach yourself to a group that is already tracking you and pulls you in. It was 4 Army veterans that are at the core of our company. We had worked together in previous jobs, so we knew each other. We knew our strengths. We knew our weaknesses. And that's what you need to find out. Don't send out resumes. Send out your friends. Talk to your old platoon sergeant. Find out what she or he is doing today. Talk to your old company commander. Find out what he or she is doing today. You want to work with people that not only are doing something that they love, but you want to work with friends You want to work with people that know your potential and ideally know you personally. So among a couple of things you need to be doing already right now, if you're considering going out and starting your own entity, first thing you have to do is figure out what you're going to do to keep the lights on and pay the rent. Do not quit your job or do not leave the Army without having something to keep the lights on and paying the rent. So it might mean for the first year or two, if you're not 100% certain, you might have to get that desk job. You might have to get that 9 to 5 until you build up the capital, the money, or you build up the network and the people to be able to bring you into that next thing. So one of the things you can do right now, if you even think that this world of entrepreneurship is what you're looking for, read one book. It's called The Intelligent Entrepreneur by Bill Murphy Jr. It's a pretty quick read. It's 4 stories. One of them, especially the historyofmilitary.com, you'll really appreciate that story. But read it. If that resonates, if that sounds familiar, then read the next book. And the next book is The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. And if you like that book, if that resonates, then start to pursue opportunities to start your own entity or to join a group that is. What I advocated, and I said to you earlier that I got a chance to testify before Congress about how we can fix the transition process. I said that we should do something very simple, which is tailor the transition to the person. Wow! Think about how you started the Army. You went through physicals, you went through examinations, we asked you what you were good at, we gave you an ASVAB, if you were a commissioned officer, we sent you through years of selection until finally you were commissioned or you actually became a soldier and joined a unit. But even before that, you went to basic, you went to follow-on expertise training. If you were an officer, you probably had a chance to go to airborne school, you went to your specialist school. I went a full calendar year of specialized training before I joined my first unit. And we all know, maybe some of you are the exception, but I know that most of you have a chain of command that probably said, yeah, all your transition stuff, you can do it when you're done. You can do it when you've got time. In the meantime, we've got this. I know you're not going to deploy with us, or I know you're an ice cube and you're not going to go to the next thing, but in the meantime, we've got this detail that you're going to be a part of. So we spend a calendar year getting people ready to join the Army, and we spend very little time at all tailoring your transition out. So what I want to make sure you understand over the next 5, 10 minutes I got left, 8 minutes, is what you can be doing to tailor your transition. So the second thing, and again, I didn't even talk about what business you're going into. I don't care if it's selling apples or building Ride Scout. It doesn't matter. It's the very nature of how you set the conditions for yourself. The second thing that you got to be doing is thinking right now, who is doing something that you really think is cool? It's that simple. People will be what they can see. So go look for somebody doing something amazing that you would love to be a part of. It's that simple. I always knew that if I ever had a chance, if people would just let me be me, then I might be able to do something successful. In this particular case, we lucked out on our first tryout to go, all 4 of us, in terms of our first company coming out of the Army. But that is by far the exception. But people will be what they can see, so go find the people doing something you find interesting. Someone says, well, how do I know what I find interesting? Easy. What do you find yourself doing Saturday morning when you have no other responsibilities? What do you do in your free time? Man, big giant chest. So when you figure out what you enjoy doing, when you start exploring that, it's going to lead the path to take you to what you might be doing next. And I say might because some of you are just going to be really involved in a really awesome hobby. And that's all it is. It's a hobby. It might be a distraction from you and your family, but it is a hobby. But where you might stumble into something cool is that whatever you enjoy doing on Saturday mornings, because no kidding, when I was working in the Army in the Pentagon, Saturday mornings, I was nerding out, waking up, when the house was peaceful and quiet. I have 3 teenage daughters, and I would start to work on this algorithm to figure out what is it? What are the trade-offs in productivity and time and cost and transportation and money and blah, blah, blah. That's what I was doing in my free time. So if you're an outdoor nut and you are always going on long runs and you are biking and you love the Ironman company, if you love the mud races, have you ever thought of applying to work with them? It's really that simple. I am not in any way, shape, or form a rocket scientist over here. You don't have to fill some expectation of what others have for you. If you're doing something you love, you will never work another day in your life. When I was doing Ride Scout in my free time, nights and weekends, I would burn Army leave that I was later going to lose not get at Army transition for my terminal leave. I would burn leave to go to these transportation conferences on the weekends. Because the way I felt it, until the Army fixes the transition process, I didn't feel comfortable about being on active duty, going to some of these conferences towards a future job, so I would just burn leave. By the way, I advocate for the fact that the Army, when I testify before Congress, should give a service member for every year of service $2,000, just straight up seed money. Imagine if you got 10 years in and $20,000 to start your own business. But in addition, 1 week of temporary duty, TDY, permissive TDY, paid for every year of service for letting you go experiment and intern and shadow. For gosh sakes, when we go into combat, we'll give you sometimes 4 to 6 weeks of left seat, right seat ride to see what that job is like. And you're, a platoon sergeant doing the exact same job, but we know it's so important for you to climatize. We give you 4 to 6 weeks of right seat ride. In the United States Army, we give you 0. No wonder people quit jobs after like 2 and 3 days or a week or 2 in the civilian world, because they had no idea. So people be what they can see. Find somebody doing a job you really think is cool, and if you need to, burn leave and go spend a weekend doing it. I recently had a friend of mine ask, Joseph, would it be okay if my son, who's in college getting ready to graduate, follows you around for a day? So keep up. Absolutely, let's go. He watched me, meetings and in and out and this and that and the hustle and bustle, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, he was exhausted just watching. But I wasn't, because I love this. I lead a company right now. Is it somebody else's? Who else is moving? I lead a company today of 40 people that was previously 4 people. And today, in fact, we just had new employee training. That's why I was able to sneak up here like this today for compliance and buying and procurement. All the same mandatory training stuff Army does, we have to do in the civilian world too. 21 people were in the audience that we've hired since September when we got acquired by Mercedes. I used to do this for free Saturday mornings, and now I get paid a lot of money to do it, what I already did for free. How freaking cool is that? People pay me. It's like when I was a company commander or a battalion XO in Iraq. I would have done it for free. Of course, as you know, the money we make, it was almost for free. But I would have done it for free because I loved it and the mission and the purpose and the people. And to reiterate what Brad said about hiring, I've hired like 5 people now with no clue what they're going to do for our company. But after meeting them and seeing their style and their charm and their people skills and I just want to eat them up, I was like, we'll put them on the books. We'll figure out what to do with them later. Solve problems. But I say you solve problems not in a cliche way. I mean, you literally solve problems. You're used to being able to say, well, shoot, if I am the Reiki person in this room, I am responsible. And if we do not get this fixed, it is on me. And into your DNA, this code or this sense. I mean, you saw me in the front row when Brad was trying to work his slide shifter thing and it didn't quite work. I just walked up, just started hitting buttons. You don't have to ask me. I know how to solve that problem, and I will do it. If that's in your DNA, the ability to solve problems, you are going to go far in the civilian world. You are going to go far because that is a skill that oftentimes, and this is where I put my asterisk on all my points, oftentimes you don't see in the civilian world, but you unfortunately see it a lot more than you should in the military. When people come out, wave the red, white, and blue and say, oh, I'm a vet, I need a job, you should hire me, I say, well, time out, well, let's talk. But there are a lot of knuckleheads that served in the Army too. So be careful about just A, hiring somebody because they're a vet, or B, speaking for on behalf of a vet, and C, lastly, do not go around waving your retired ID card out in front as the reason why you should be getting a job. You have to perhaps use it as a foot in the door sometimes. Oh, I'll shamelessly admit that when we got vet status and we were recognized at the White House as a White House champion of change, Joseph Kopser, Ride Scout, as a vet doing things in transportation energy, I just took that military ID card and just walked like this. Said, heck yes, that would be very nice, thank you. But don't abuse it. But once you got your foot in the door, bam, throw that door open and just run. And do not wait for them to tell you the next thing. I had a battalion commander years ago, says, in the absence of further orders, attack. It's that simple. In the absence of further orders, attack. So the third thing on these 3 points that you really should not sell yourself about is whether you served in combat or not, and most people in this room did, but whether you did or not, we and our brethren and our spouses in the Army experience stressful situations, the likes of which 99% of the population will never see. And I'm not just limiting this to the military, but it's first responders of all types. But you will have placed yourself in harm's way in such a way that the next time you get into a meeting and the PowerPoint slideshow is slightly ticked off to the left or not centered, you won't go batty. But there are a lot of people in the world who still think that PowerPoint slideshows being in the right font with the right space matter. And luckily for us, their number is fewer and we are faster. You will really have an opportunity in that first job if you believe in all those same elements of the DNA that I fell in love with in the Army in terms of duty, honor, country, and service to others and teamwork. If you instill all that and walk into that first organization, guarantee you they are going to be promoting you or giving you more responsibility much faster than you ever expected. My bosses, the ones in Germany, it's kind of funny. I went 20 years in the United States Army as a cavalry officer and never served a day in Germany, ever. It's almost unheard of nowadays, but that's the post-Cold War Army that I grew up in. And yet now, ironically, as my company was hired by Mercedes-Benz, I spend a lot of time in Stuttgart, Germany now. So I get to see a lot of the areas that I almost served in when I was in the Army. But they, my peers there, really admire the military ethos, that background, that order, that discipline, whatever you want to call it. That was the last slide that Brad had you didn't get to see, but I got to see it. It said discipline, whether it's personal discipline or this notion of self-discipline, but it's about the idea of you know what's right. You absolutely know what's right. Whether you choose to follow it, well, that's a whole different story. But you know what's right. You know the right thing to say. Granted, sometimes we let slip out the gossip or the ridiculous talk or the whining, but you know the right thing to say. And then lastly, we also understand, especially those of you who have stood in the rain or the hot summer heat of Fort Hood or downrange, wherever it is, you have been in the suck before. And only you can change your attitude. Fort Hood, Texas, on the back range, there's an area where there was like bird cages or whatever, with the cows in the bird cages. I can't remember what that was called. You know what I'm talking about? All I remember was being in my tank at like 3 o'clock in the morning and the slow drip from the seal that couldn't keep the water out just kept going down onto my head all night long. You have, those of you that have been in similar situations, the ability to turn that suck into something fun. And within about 20 minutes, our entire tank was having a great time because we realized at that moment, and granted this was pre-9/11, we didn't think it'd get much worse than that because that whole day was an entire hour's worth story of all the other ridiculousness, to include 2 tanks that managed to get one up under the other. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but somebody had to pay a whole lot of money to the motor sergeant for pulling that out with their 88. But I'll end with this because I've got negative 43 seconds left. You are in control of your transition. You are in control of your next 2 to 3 years. It will not go the way you expect. I fully understand. But you have the network of peers. All those people that you served with. All those spouses that lived in your cul-de-sac. All those people in your chain of command, whether you liked them or not, and by the way, do the opposite of the ones you did not like. You were learning the whole time from all of them. And people ask us all the time at Ride Scout, like, how is it that a vet company, 4 vets leading the way in this company, how we were able to become such a success so quickly and then get acquired by one of the largest companies in the world? To which I say, I really don't know. Because this is all I've ever known from the time I was an 18-year-old starting as a cadet at West Point all the way through to my last day on active duty, May of 13. I just keep doing what the people around me did because I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like James Pippin. I wanted to be like Sergeant First Class Jose Alonso. I wanted to be like Bob Cohn. I just wanted to be like these other people, so I kept running harder, faster, stronger, trying to be happy in terrible situations, trying to do the right thing, and trying to always have a good thing to say when possible. And it was really that easy. It was really that easy. And then before I knew it, we've got a team, like I say, of 40-plus people working at Ride Scout. We're down, and I'll end on this note. So we're down in downtown Austin, Texas. It's the corner of 6th and Brazos. Our company and the platform that we have that you can download on your phone. You can download on your phone anytime that you're in Austin or in 69 other cities across the U.S. and Canada. We are always open for vets. So much so, I put my money where my mouth is 2 times. One is, we've helped create an organization called The Bunker. The Bunker Austin is going to be focused specifically on taking vets at any stage and any age, because just like with my requisite hat, I wear a hat not to be as cool as Brad is, but I wear a hat because I got bad skin of being out in the sun too much at Fort Bliss and Fort Hood. But no matter what age and what stage, we're going to help you plug in, because until the military transition process gets better, there's The Bunker. So plug into The Bunker Austin. You just Google it and find it. We'll help you figure out where you are at any stage with your company, whether it's just an idea, whether you got 3 friends working on weekends trying to nail together, or your brother-in-law or sister-in-law has got something that you've been wanting to join for the last 2 years. We'll help you plug in. That's the first thing we did. Second thing that we did, my co-founder and I, Craig Cummings, after we got all this money from the sale of the company, we took $70,000 of it and gave it to the McComb School of Business at the University of Texas and created a student veteran endowment, because we want to make it so that as people go back to school and they want to start these ideas, they have money, real cash money, to be able to start their companies like I got from my co-founder three and a half years ago when I started. And then the last thing I'll say is, anytime you're ever in Austin, Ride Scout, our offices, it's at 6th and Brazos, right there on 6th Street, in case you've ever heard of 6th Street. The doors are open until 6 p.m. I can't say they're always open. But if you text us, we'll let you in upstairs. You can tweet at us and say, hey, I'm an Army vet or an Army spouse. I'm downstairs. I want to come up and say hello. Think of our space downtown as a free Starbucks that serves beer all the time. Because one of the things that drove me crazy in the Army was you couldn't have beer at work. No. You can't have beer and then drive. That should be the only rule. You shouldn't have beer and then let it interfere with your work. Those should be the rules. But if I want to be able to drink a beer at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and it's a Friday when everything's done, I should be able to do that. Well, the Army had rules that you couldn't. I have a company now, so the rule is the beer will always be in the fridge. It's a great rule to have. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.